Behavior change is one of the main reasons that clients come to coaching and therapy. But of course, it is easier said than done, especially when it comes to behaviors that have a bit of an addictive character. To move from an unhealthy old behavior to a healthy new behavior, here are the 4 pillars of behavior change. Number 1, understand and address the reasons for the old unhealthy behavior. Number 2, eliminate any choice by adopting an environment where the old behavior is impossible and the new behavior is mandatory. If this is not possible and choice is still available, then number 3, associate sufficient pleasure with the new behavior so that the pleasure of the new behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. And finally, number 4, associate sufficient pain with the old behavior such that the pain of the old behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. In practice, we might use a combination of all 4 to get the best results. Let's go through them one by one. Well, firstly and obviously, we should explore and understand exactly why we are engaged in a behavior that is harming us. For example, if you have bad eating habits, maybe it's simply the addictive refined sugar in the food you're eating that is the problem, or perhaps there is something deeper going on. For example, perhaps this is emotional eating that is covering up some unhappiness you are experiencing. Or perhaps there is a disempowering story that has been created around eating. One client who suffered from overeating came from a family with a domineering mother where love was equated to eating her rich food in large quantities. Eating normal portions of healthy foods felt very uncomfortable, like a rejection of love. As we dug deeper, a troubling family history revealed itself. In these and other cases, it is important to understand and address the deep underlying reasons for the unhealthy behavior. If these can be addressed, then frequently the unhealthy coping mechanism, the unhealthy behavior, will disappear. Sometimes the mere fact of revealing the details of an unhealthy behavior to a professional can in itself cause change. The behavior that was silently and reflexively a part of you is now out there in the room. It's a thing being discussed by the two of you. Often the client can get what I like to call a helicopter moment, where they can see their unhealthy behavior as if from a great height, and they look down wondering, what on earth have I been doing? There are also pragmatic steps we can take to change behavior. The second pillar of behavior change is environment change, specifically moving to an environment or creating an environment where the old behavior is impossible and the new behavior is mandatory. This completely removes the tiring struggle with motivation, willpower, and bargaining, as there is simply no choice. The environment compels you to act in a certain way. For example, if you want to give up alcohol, go live in Saudi Arabia or a dry town in the United States where it's impossible to get alcohol. If you are an aspiring athlete struggling with discipline, go live in a training camp where you have no choice but to train hard and eat a perfect diet. Now, of course, this kind of radical environment change is not always available. But even if you cannot create an environment which compels you, you can still create one which supports you. One example is that of associating yourself with people who are living the lifestyle and habits you want to live. So if you are a problematic drinker, having your drinking buddies as your social group, as wonderful as these people are, might not be a clever idea. Maybe you want to reconnect with the social group you used to do hiking adventures with instead. If you had decided to eat healthily, make your home environment one where bad foods are prohibited and make raw vegetable snacks readily available on your kitchen countertop where your hand will reflexively reach out for them as you walk past. Change the route you walk home from work so that it no longer passes the McDonald's or the pub, but passes the gym instead. Or perhaps you decide to live or work with someone who is going to be your accountability buddy. There are hundreds of ideas like this to change the environment you live in and move around to support you to adopt better behaviors. Remember that your environment tends to be stronger than your willpower, so consciously make it the most supportive environment that you can. If you cannot create an environment where choice is removed from you, then you are in a situation where you have to choose to cease the old behavior and do the new behavior. Let's look at how this might happen. Firstly, we recognize that humans are driven by pleasure and pain. You are repeating the current harmful behavior because, on some level, it gives you pleasure or helps you avoid pain, even if only temporarily. You will choose the new behavior instead of this if the pleasure you get from the new behavior exceeds the pleasure from the old behavior. This is pillar number 3. Associate sufficient pleasure with the new behavior so that the pleasure of the new behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. In practice, this means you must create an emotionally potent vision around the new behavior. Something which is exciting and compelling and pulls you forward. For example, let's imagine the old behavior is I smoke, and the new vision is I give up smoking. How exciting is that vision for the new behavior? Well, not very exciting. Indeed, that choice of language is a poor one, and it may actually give you a sense of loss, of lack. You are, after all, giving up something, losing something pleasurable, and you do not want to leave an empty hole where the old habit was. Instead, how about the new behavior is described as something like, I liberate myself from smoking and embrace a new life of health, energy, and a reclaimed sense of pride for being a positive role model for my children. See how different this is to giving up smoking? With clients, I work to create as much positive meaning and emotion as we can around the new behavior so that the client gets pulled forward by something which is exciting to them, rather than having to use precious willpower to push. Willpower rarely works for more than a short period of time. With the right vision, which realizes your deepest values, motivation can last a lifetime. If the pull of the exciting new behavior is still not strong enough to break the old habit, then we move to pillar number 4. Associate sufficient pain with the old behavior, so that the pain of the old behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. This is more powerful than pillar 3, because human beings are wired to avoid pain more than they are to pursue pleasure. For example, there are studies that show that we experience the pain of a financial loss twice as much as the pleasure of a similar financial gain, a phenomenon called loss aversion. Question: what are you losing as a result of this behavior that, if you focused on it and really intensified it, makes continuing the behavior unbearable? It may not be the obvious candidate. For example, the risk of a painful death from lung cancer is not enough to deter many smokers because that pain is far off in the future and might not happen if they are lucky. You need to feel pain of some sort intensely now in order to be able to overwhelm the pleasure of the bad habit you experience now. Start searching and try a few things out. Sticking to the example of smoking, one of my best friends had many failed attempts to give up this habit. Arguments that he was damaging his health, risking cancer, and wasting money were not enough to motivate him. What finally worked to break the habit was the fear and pain he felt, realizing his young daughter might copy him and he might not be around to see her when she grew up. Find yourself a strong enough pain point and you can break any habit. By the way, as I mentioned, this strategy of negative emotion is more powerful than the previous positive emotion strategy. And yet we use the positive emotion strategy first. Why is that? The reason is that we want to live in a state of positive emotions. We want to be making change out of excitement and joy for the new behaviors, the new lifestyle we are building, the life of our dreams, and not out of fear of losing something. We don't want to be getting into the habit of making negative emotion and fear the driver of our lives. So this pillar 4, we only use as a last resort. So that's it. Once again, the 4 pillars of behavior change are: 1. Understand and address the reasons for the unhealthy old behavior. 2. Eliminate any choice by adopting an environment where the old behavior is impossible and the new behavior is mandatory. If this is not possible and choice is still available, then 3. Associate sufficient pleasure with the new behavior so that the pleasure of the new behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. And finally, 4. Associate sufficient pain with the old behavior such that the pain of the old behavior is greater than the pleasure of the old behavior. By the way, for pillars 3 and 4, it is not sufficient just to identify the pleasurable vision of the new habit or the painful vision of the old. You have to connect the pleasure or pain with regularity and with emotional intensity for the change in behavior to happen. This is not an intellectual exercise. There are, of course, dozens, if not hundreds, of other supporting strategies and tricks to create behavior change, more than I have time to go into here, but they all tend to boil down to the 4 core pillars I've explored here. There is one final thing I would like to offer, and that is the power of habit formation. In the beginning, carrying out the new behavior can be challenging. But over time, as it starts to become a habit, you will require less and less willpower as those new neural patterns get laid down and the behavior becomes automatic. You might want to stay in bed, but you will observe yourself getting up and putting your trainers on to go out for an energizing run. You might be craving junk food, but you will observe your arm at the store, reaching out and choosing the healthy option. And of course, you will feel healthy and energetic and proud for the rest of the day after doing this. The power of habit that was so destructive when it involved the bad behavior will be empowering when it supports the new healthy behavior, the new you.